Eridani Prime had always been a world of contrasts. Its mountains reached high into the sky, their snow-capped peaks shining in the light of the twin suns. Vast oceans stretched beyond the horizon, their waves sparkling like glass under the sun. Lush forests covered large regions, filled with life and color. Yet, despite its beauty, the world was now a place of fear. The people of Eridani Prime had lived in peace for generations. Their cities were bright and full of life, with markets bustling with traders and streets filled with children laughing. Science and art thrived alongside industry. They had explored much of their own world and dreamed of reaching beyond the stars. But now, those dreams had vanished. A shadow had fallen over the planet, and it came from the sky. At first, it was subtle, a faint dark shape in the distance that no one could explain. Then came the attacks. Alien ships descended, faster and stronger than anything Eridani scientists had ever imagined. The invaders were unlike any species humanity had encountered. They moved in perfect coordination, striking with speed and precision. Cities were destroyed in hours, and millions were forced to flee. The world's defenses, once thought to be strong, were overwhelmed. Commander Lyra stood on the balcony of the city's command center, staring out at the devastation. Her uniform was dusty and torn, a reminder of the battles she had fought alongside her soldiers. Her eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of hope. The city below her was burning. Buildings crumbled under alien fire, streets were filled with fleeing civilians, and smoke covered the sky. The scent of burning metal and scorched earth filled the air. Lyra's mind raced as she thought of the people she was responsible for. She had seen friends fall, families torn apart, and children crying in fear. Every decision she made now could mean life or death for hundreds of people. Yet, no matter how many plans she created, the enemy always seemed one step ahead. "We need help," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "Someone has to hear us. Someone has to come." The Planetary Council had tried everything. Messages were sent to nearby star systems, asking for assistance. Advanced communication arrays were activated, sending pleas across light years of space. Yet, every attempt met with silence. No replies came. No ships appeared. No allies answered the call. It was not that they were ignored intentionally. Perhaps no one had the strength to come. Perhaps the universe had not noticed the small, fragile world in danger. Whatever the reason, Eridani Prime was alone. Lyra turned to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Arik. He was younger, but sharp and determined. "Arik, prepare the evacuation protocols. We cannot hold them here forever. Get the civilians to the shelters and ready the transport ships. I will organize the defense squads." Arik nodded, his face set in a grim line. "Understood, Commander. We will do everything we can." As the sun began to set, the city's sky turned orange and red, painted with smoke and fire. The first wave of the alien forces had arrived again, faster than anyone expected. Lyra could see their ships gliding over the mountains, moving in perfect formation. Their shapes were strange and terrifying, organic and mechanical at the same time. Their weapons fired in pulses of bright light, destroying everything in their path. Lyra's squad of soldiers was ready. They had fought in countless battles, but nothing could have prepared them for this. Every attack was different. The aliens adapted quickly, learning from each engagement. Human weapons, no matter how advanced, barely scratched their defenses. Despite the fear, Lyra refused to let despair take over. She gathered her soldiers in the command room, a large hall filled with maps, screens, and communication devices. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice firm and calm. "We may not have allies, but we still have each other. We will defend our people with everything we have. Evacuations will happen in waves. We hold the perimeter until the last civilians are safe. We do not run. We do not surrender. Remember that?" Her words sparked determination among her team. They nodded, checking their weapons and preparing for the fight. Outside, the first explosions rocked the city. Buildings collapsed, and the screams of those trapped echoed through the streets. Lyra took a deep breath. Her eyes scanned the sky one last time. "If no one comes for us," she whispered, "then we will survive ourselves." In the control center, a signal alarm suddenly rang. Lyra rushed to the main console. The communication array had detected a faint response. Just a signal, not a ship. The message was garbled, difficult to interpret, but it was there. A glimmer of hope sparked in her chest. Maybe someone heard us, she thought. Arik joined her at the console. "Commander, it's faint. But yes, it's real. We need to amplify it and see where it's coming from." They worked together, adjusting frequencies, filtering noise, and focusing the array on the incoming signal. It was difficult, taking all their attention, but slowly, words began to form. A voice, alien but strangely familiar in tone, spoke. "We hear your plea. Help. Coming." Lyra's heart raced. Help was coming. She shared the moment with her team, faces lighting up for the first time in days. But the message ended there. No one knew when this help would arrive, who they were, or what they were capable of. The sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness fell over the burning city. Fires glowed like rivers of red and gold, casting shadows that danced across broken walls. The people huddled in shelters, listening to the distant explosions, praying silently for the mysterious force that had promised to come. Lyra stayed on the balcony, watching the sky, her hands resting on the railing. She thought about the generations who had lived on Eridani Prime, the scientists, the farmers, the children. She thought about what it meant to survive, to fight, and to hope. She realized that hope itself was a weapon, perhaps the most powerful one they had left. The first night passed in chaos. Explosions echoed through the city like distant thunder, punctuated by the shrieks of collapsing metal. Soldiers moved through the streets, escorting civilians to safety. Lyra coordinated the defense with precision, moving squads to key locations, reinforcing weak points, and making sure no one was left behind. By morning, the city was scarred, but still standing. The alien horde had not been defeated, but neither had humanity been crushed. The survivors emerged from shelters, their faces marked by exhaustion, fear, and determination. Children clung to their parents. While elders whispered words of encouragement, Lyra gathered her squad for a brief moment of rest. "Today we fight again," she said. "And tomorrow we fight again. We are not alone. We may not see it yet, but help is coming. Until then, we survive, we protect, and we endure." Her words were a promise, both to herself and to the people of Eridani Prime. They had no allies yet, but they had courage. They had determination. And they had the will to fight, even when the odds were against them. As night fell again, the sky was filled with alien ships, moving in formation, their weapons ready. But far beyond the horizon, unseen by the people of Eridani Prime, something stirred in the darkness of space. Something powerful, relentless, and unyielding. Something that would change everything. Lyra did not know what it was, but deep in her heart, she felt it. The answer to their prayers was coming, whether it was a friend or a force they could barely comprehend. It was near, and for the first time in weeks, Lyra allowed herself to hope. The morning on Eridani Prime was quiet, but the peace was only a fragile illusion. Smoke still curled from the ruins of the city, painting the sky with gray streaks that clashed with the pale light of the twin suns. Survivors moved cautiously through the streets, helping the injured and carrying the wounded to temporary shelters. Commander Lyra stood at the edge of the city, her gaze scanning the horizon. Her mind was already planning the next moves. Knowing that the enemy would not rest, reports from scouts came in, each one more alarming than the last. The alien horde was advancing faster than expected. Their ships moved like living predators, dropping pods filled with creatures designed to destroy and conquer. Entire neighborhoods were lost before the city's defenders could even react. The humans had weapons, shields, and strategy. But the invaders were adaptive, striking where they were weakest and retreating before a counterattack could succeed. Lyra gathered her squad near the central command. "Listen carefully," she said. "The aliens are testing us. They want to see how we respond. Every loss, every retreat teaches them our patterns. We need to change our strategy constantly. We cannot be predictable. Our second in command, Lieutenant Arik, frowned as he looked at the maps of the city. Commander, the enemy has broken through the eastern sector. Civilians are trapped, and our reinforcements are delayed. Lyra clenched her jaw. We move immediately. Gather the rescue teams and escort the civilians to the shelters. I will lead the counterattack. We cannot let them gain ground inside the city. The squad moved quickly. Soldiers ran through debris-strewn streets, carrying supplies and guiding terrified families. Children clung to their parents, their small hands trembling. Old men and women shuffled along, leaning on canes or each other for support. Smoke filled the air, and the acrid smell of burning buildings made every breath a challenge. Lyra led her soldiers into the eastern sector. The ground shook beneath them as alien fire struck nearby, sending sparks and rubble flying. The enemies were unlike anything the humans had faced before. They were both mechanical and organic, moving with a fluid grace that made their attacks unpredictable. Their weapons were strange, firing energy pulses that left deep burns on stone and metal. Despite the terror, Lyra remained focused. She guided her squad through the chaos, helping civilians to safety and coordinating the defense. Soldiers fought bravely, holding positions against the advancing aliens. They used every weapon at their disposal: blasters, shields, and automated drones, but it was clear that brute force alone would not win this fight. As they reached the edge of the sector, Lyra spotted a group of civilians trapped near a collapsed building. The debris was too heavy for the soldiers to move alone, and the aliens were closing in. Thinking quickly, Lyra ordered, "Use the drones. Create a diversion while we clear a path." The drones activated, firing small bursts of light and sound to distract the enemies. While the aliens investigated the drones, Lyra and her squad worked together to move the debris, lifting heavy beams and rocks to free the civilians. Children cried in relief as they were pulled from the rubble, and parents hugged them tightly, whispering words of reassurance. But there was no time to celebrate. Alien ships hovered overhead, releasing more pods that dropped into the city with a thunderous impact. Lyra could see the destruction spreading in all directions. Buildings crumbled under the force of the attacks. Streets once filled with life became battlefields. The squad pressed forward, moving toward the city center. Their mission was not only to protect civilians, but to slow the enemy advance. Every second they bought meant lives saved. Lyra noticed patterns in the alien attacks, small weaknesses in their formation, moments when their attention was divided. She quickly shared this with her squad. Focus on their pods. Stop them before they reach the civilians. Work together. Cover each other. Soldiers responded with determination. They fired at the pods, used shields to block energy blasts, and coordinated their movements with precision. Each successful defense allowed a group of civilians to escape. Each failure reminded them of the stakes. Hours passed in a blur of movement, noise, and tension. Lyra felt her energy draining, but she refused to stop. She knew that if she faltered even for a moment, the cost would be too high. Her squad relied on her guidance, and the civilians relied on her courage. She pushed herself forward, moving from one firefight to another, coordinating attacks, and rescuing those in need. As the sun climbed higher, the alien forces intensified. They seemed to anticipate every move, their attacks becoming more precise and ruthless. Lyra realized that human strategy alone would not be enough to hold them off. Something stronger would be needed. Something beyond human strength and ingenuity, and then, in the distance, a strange sight appeared. Shadows moved across the horizon, larger than any human or alien craft Lyra had ever seen. Massive shapes glided through the air, moving with a fluid grace that suggested power and confidence. Soldiers paused in awe, their weapons momentarily forgotten, as they stared at the approaching figures. Lyra squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. These were not the alien invaders. They were something else entirely. Towering, armored, and almost otherworldly, they moved toward the battlefield without hesitation. Their presence radiated strength, and for the first time in days, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. The strange beings landed in the city with incredible precision. Their arrival was accompanied by a force that shook the ground and sent debris flying in all directions. They did not attack recklessly. They moved with purpose, striking at the alien horde with devastating efficiency. Energy blasts, strange weapons, and overwhelming strength tore through the invaders. In moments, entire waves of the enemy were destroyed, leaving nothing but scorched earth and silence. Lyra and her squad watched in disbelief. The aliens had been unstoppable, adaptive, and terrifying. Yet these new beings seemed to tear through them effortlessly, moving with a combination of power and strategy that surpassed anything humans had seen. Soldiers whispered among themselves, barely able to comprehend the scale of what was happening. Commander Orcs said, his voice low, "Who? What are they?" Lyra shook her head, unable to answer. She did not know, and she did not have time to speculate. The aliens were still attacking, though now they seemed cautious, aware of the new threat. "We fight with them," she said. "We protect the civilians. We survive. That is all that matters." The squad moved forward, taking advantage of the chaos. They coordinated with the strange beings as best they could, covering civilians and engaging enemy forces. The aliens, now under constant pressure, began to retreat. Confused by the sudden arrival of the new warriors, hours passed, and the city began to stabilize. Fires still burned and smoke filled the sky, but the immediate threat had been pushed back. Civilians emerged from shelters, looking around in awe and fear. They had witnessed power beyond comprehension, a force that had arrived just in time to save them from certain destruction. Lyra stood on a ridge overlooking the city, her body exhausted but her mind sharp. She watched the strange beings as they moved through the battlefield, finishing what had begun. There was no malice in their actions, no unnecessary destruction, only precision, strength, and purpose. As the day turned to evening, Lyra realized that the fight was not over. The aliens might regroup, or new enemies could arrive. But for the first time in days, she felt a sense of relief. They had survived another day. Something powerful had entered their world, something that could turn the tide. She turned to Arik, who was still staring at the horizon. "We do not know who they are," she said, "but we need to learn. We fight alongside them. We observe, and we adapt. That is our chance to survive." Arik nodded. "Understood, Commander? But they are incredible. I've never seen anything like them." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Neither have I. But incredible or not, they are here. And sometimes that is all the hope we need." As night fell, Eridani Prime remained scarred, but alive. The people moved through the streets, caring for the injured, rebuilding what they could, and whispering stories of the beings who had appeared like giants from the sky. Children looked up at the stars, wondering who or what had come to save them. Soldiers sharpened their weapons, prepared for whatever might come next, and far beyond the atmosphere. In the black silence of space, the beings who had arrived observed the planet. Their presence was calm but deliberate, a promise of power, protection, and perhaps judgment. They were called Deathworlders, though no one on Eridani Prime knew that yet. Lyra stood on the ridge one last time before returning to the command center. She looked at the sky, filled with stars, and thought of the message they had sent weeks ago, the plea for help that had gone unanswered. Now, help had arrived, but not in the way anyone had expected. The battle had changed, and with it, the fate of Eridani Prime. For the first time in a long time, hope was real. The air above Eridani Prime shimmered with the strange energy of the new arrivals. Commander Lyra and her squad had seen glimpses of them yesterday, but now, as the sun rose, their presence became impossible to ignore. Towering figures moved across the landscape, their massive armored forms reflecting the morning light. Their size was breathtaking, and their movements were precise and purposeful. Every step they took seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Yet nothing was wasted. Lyra watched from the ridge, her mind racing. The alien horde still lingered on the outskirts of the city, regrouping, but the Deathworlders did not hesitate. They moved like storms over the battlefield, striking with efficiency and strength. Entire squads of invaders were neutralized before they could even react. Energy blasts, strange mechanical devices, and incredible physical power tore through the enemy lines. Lyra's soldiers had never witnessed anything like it. Lieutenant Arik, standing beside her, spoke in a low voice. "They are unstoppable. Look at them. The aliens cannot even defend themselves. I've never seen anything like this." Lyra nodded, still observing the battlefield. "We fight alongside them. That is our only chance to survive. Pay attention to their movements. Learn from them." The humans hesitated at first. The Deathworlders' power was overwhelming. Soldiers feared that trying to coordinate with such beings might result in chaos or even accidents. But as Lyra led her squad forward, they began to see a pattern in the Deathworlders' methods. Each action was calculated. Every strike served a purpose. There was no waste, no unnecessary force. They were efficient, brutal when necessary, but never careless. Lyra moved her squad into the heart of the battle. Civilians were still trapped in some districts, and the aliens were trying to break through again. With guidance from the Deathworlders, the humans learned quickly. They took cover where the giants moved, attacked when the Deathworlders created openings, rescued civilians in coordination with the alien hunters. The Deathworlders did not speak as humans did. Their language was unknown, a series of vibrations and clicks that Lyra could not comprehend. Yet their intentions were clear. They were protectors, warriors who struck decisively at any threat. Their actions were a silent instruction to humanity: adapt, fight, and survive. Lyra led a group toward the central plaza, where dozens of civilians were trapped by collapsed buildings and alien pods. The streets were littered with rubble, and alien forces were trying to press forward. Lyra raised her hand, signaling the squad to hold position. She studied the Deathworlders' movements. One giant lifted a massive pod with ease and hurled it into the sky, destroying it before it could explode. Another crushed a group of aliens with a single sweep. Clearing a path for civilians to escape, inspired the humans acted in sync. Soldiers created diversions, distracted the aliens, and led the trapped citizens to safety. It was a new kind of battle, one where humans were not the strongest, but where their intelligence, strategy, and quick thinking complemented the raw power of the Deathworlders. Hours passed like this, continuous dance of chaos and control. The humans began to understand the strengths and weaknesses of their new allies. They noticed that the Deathworlders were patient. They did not attack recklessly. They waited for the perfect moment to strike, teaching humanity an important lesson. Power alone was not enough. Victory required patience, observation, and timing. In the middle of the battle, Lyra spotted an alien commander attempting to organize a counterattack. The creature was larger and more intelligent than the others, coordinating pods and soldiers with strategy and precision. If it succeeded, the city might fall again. Lyra signaled Arik, who understood immediately. "We have to stop it," she said, "and we need the Deathworlders' help." She ran toward the commander, dodging debris and blasts. The Deathworlders followed, their massive forms moving effortlessly through the battlefield. One of them grabbed a hovering alien pod midair and smashed it into the ground, cutting off reinforcements for the enemy commander. Another leaped over buildings, landing with precision to block a critical path. Lyra's squad advanced carefully, using the openings created by the Deathworlders. Soldiers fired with accuracy, targeting weak points, while civilians were guided to safety. The alien commander realized too late that it was surrounded. Its attacks were fierce but fragmented, and the Deathworlders moved with speed and intelligence, neutralizing the threat completely. When the last of the alien commander's forces fell, the city went silent. Smoke still rose from destroyed buildings, and the ground trembled under the steps of the Deathworlders. Yet for the first time in days, there was calm. Humans and survivors slowly emerged from hiding, staring at the giants who had saved their lives. Lyra approached one of the Deathworlders cautiously. It turned its head, regarding her with eyes that seemed to pierce through her very being. Despite the alien features, Lyra felt no hostility. There was only understanding, a recognition that they had done well. She lowered her weapon in respect, bowing slightly. The Deathworlder did not respond in words, but a nod of its massive head acknowledged her gesture. The humans realized then that this was not merely a battle. It was a partnership. The Deathworlders were not just warriors, they were teachers. Their presence on the battlefield was a lesson in survival, strategy, and courage. As the sun began to set, Lyra gathered her squad. We survived today because we adapted, because we learned, and because we fought with the strongest allies we could imagine. But this is only the beginning. We need to understand them, train with them, and be ready for the next attack. The aliens will not give up easily, Arik nodded. Commander, they are incredible. Their strength, their speed, it's beyond anything we've known. How do we ever hope to fight like them? Lyra looked at the horizon, where the Deathworlders now stood silently, watching the remnants of the battlefield. We don't need to be like them, she said softly. We need to be ourselves, humans. But we will use every lesson they teach, every tactic we can learn. We fight with our minds, our hearts, and our courage. That is our power. That night, as survivors slept in temporary shelters, the city remained under guard. Lyra and her squad patrolled the streets, ensuring that no alien forces remained hidden. Fires still burned, casting an orange glow over the ruins, but there was hope in the air. Civilians whispered stories of the towering warriors who had saved them, calling them giants of legend. Lyra took a moment to reflect. The arrival of the Deathworlders had changed everything. Humanity had been weak, desperate, and almost defeated. Now, they had seen what true strength looked like. And more importantly, had learned how to survive alongside it. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. The aliens could regroup, or new threats could arrive. But humanity had learned a vital lesson. They were not powerless. With courage, intelligence, and allies like the Deathworlders, they had a chance to fight back. The Deathworlders did not linger long. As suddenly as they had arrived, they moved away from the city, surveying other areas of the planet. Lyra watched them go, her heart filled with a mix of awe and determination. She did not know when they would return, or what their ultimate purpose was. But she understood one truth. Humanity had been given a second chance. The following days were spent rebuilding and learning. Soldiers practiced tactics, inspired by the Deathworlders, observing their movements and adapting strategies. Civilians assisted in fortifying the city, creating shelters and defenses. Every small victory became a step toward recovery. Every lesson learned a shield against the future. Lyra often returned to the ridge. Watching the horizon where the Deathworlders had disappeared, she could feel their presence in the air, a reminder that strength came not only from physical power, but from knowledge, coordination, and courage. Humanity had been tested, and they had survived. Now, with the Deathworlders' silent guidance, they would be ready for anything, and far above the planet. In the dark expanse of space, the Deathworlders continued their watch. They were patient, relentless, and wise. They would return when needed, but for now, they'd given humanity a gift far greater than victory. They'd given them hope. Lyra stood alone on the ridge as night fell, staring at the stars. The city was quiet for the first time in days. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of survival. The Deathworlders had shown her a truth she would never forget. Humans could endure, adapt, and rise above even the greatest dangers. The future of Eridani Prime was uncertain. But it was no longer hopeless. The Deathworlders had arrived, and humanity had learned to fight alongside them. Together, they would face the coming challenges. And Lyra knew that no matter how dark the days ahead might seem, the light of courage and hope would never be extinguished. The morning air on Eridani Prime was heavy with the smell of smoke and scorched earth, but it carried a new kind of energy determination. The city was still scarred from the alien attacks, but the people had begun to understand something vital. They were not powerless. They had seen what the Deathworlders could do, and now they were learning how to fight alongside them. Commander Lyra stood on the ridge overlooking the city, her eyes scanning the horizon. Alien forces were regrouping, preparing for another assault. Yet this time, the humans were ready. Soldiers had studied the Deathworlders' tactics, learned to recognize patterns, and adapted their strategy. Civilians assisted in fortifying key positions, creating barriers, and preparing safe routes for evacuation. The city had become a living, breathing defense network. And at its center stood humanity's courage. Today, Lyra said to her squad, "We fight not just to survive, but to reclaim our home. The Deathworlders have shown us the way. But it is our actions that will decide our future. Stay sharp, stay together, and remember your training." Lieutenant Eric nodded, checking his equipment. "We've seen their strength, Commander, but we also know how to support them. Together, we can drive the aliens back." The first wave arrived just as the suns reached their zenith. Alien ships hovered above the city, releasing pods filled with the same terrifying creatures that had plagued Eridani Prime. The ground shook with each impact, and buildings trembled under the force of explosions. Civilians screamed as chaos erupted once more, yet this time, the humans were not paralyzed by fear. Soldiers moved in coordinated squads. Civilians were guided to safety. The Deathworlders descended onto the battlefield with their usual precision. They struck with overwhelming power, crushing alien forces in moments. While humans supported them by controlling paths, securing civilians, and targeting vulnerable points, Lyra led a squad to the eastern sector, where a cluster of civilian shelters was under threat. Alien pods were dropping relentlessly, and the creatures were advancing quickly. She signaled her team to form a defensive line, placing barricades and using energy shields to protect the shelters. A massive Deathworlder landed nearby, its armor gleaming in the sunlight. It moved with incredible speed, neutralizing pods and alien squads alike. Lyra observed carefully, noting how it predicted enemy movements and struck at the precise moment to maximize impact. She realized that every human action could complement this power. Timing, positioning, and strategy became their weapons alongside the Deathworlders' raw strength. "Focus on the gaps," Lyra instructed her squad. "Use their movements to your advantage. Every time they strike, we act. Every time we act, we protect civilians and weaken the enemy." The squad moved with precision. Soldiers fired at key targets, created distractions, and guided civilians along safe paths. The Deathworlders responded seamlessly, clearing the battlefield of immediate threats while humans ensured no one was left behind. Children and families emerged from hiding, their eyes wide with awe as the giants moved among them, protecting and fighting with incredible skill. Hours passed in a blur of movement. Explosions shook the city, but Lyra's squad worked tirelessly, coordinating attacks and ensuring the safety of every civilian. The humans began to notice subtle details in the Deathworlders' methods, how they used terrain, how they conserved energy, and how they focused on high-priority targets. Every lesson was a revelation, teaching humanity not just how to survive, but how to fight efficiently against overwhelming odds. In the central plaza, a group of aliens attempted a coordinated strike to capture a vital energy hub. Lyra quickly assessed the situation and signaled her squad. "We cut them off. Support the Deathworlders. Protect the hub at all costs." The Deathworlders moved with incredible precision, creating openings that Lyra's squad exploited. Soldiers set traps, redirected alien forces, and targeted weak points identified by observing the giants' actions. Civilians in nearby shelters watched in amazement, realizing that their defenders were no longer helpless. Humanity had found a new strength in unity, courage, and quick thinking. As the battle raged, Lyra noticed a pattern forming. The aliens were beginning to hesitate, confused by the coordinated human Deathworlder response. Their previously relentless attacks slowed, and mistakes became more frequent. Lyra seized the opportunity. "Push forward!" she shouted. "Take control of the plaza." The squad advanced, moving in perfect synchronization with the Deathworlders. Together, they drove the alien forces back, securing the plaza and ensuring that the energy hub remained intact. The humans cheered, their morale soaring as they witnessed the combined power of intelligence and strength. By late afternoon, the city's defensive lines had stabilized. The aliens were retreating, regrouping on the outskirts, while humans and Deathworlders worked together to secure the streets. Soldiers helped clear debris, repaired barriers, and guided civilians to safer areas. The Deathworlders remained vigilant, their massive forms patrolling the perimeter and deterring any attempt at a surprise attack. Lyra took a moment to observe the results of their efforts. The city was battered, yet alive. Civilians were safe, and key areas were protected. Most importantly, humanity had learned that they could fight alongside beings far stronger than themselves. Their courage, intelligence, and adaptability had turned the tide of the battle. As evening fell, Lyra gathered her squad and addressed the survivors. "We have survived today because we adapted, because we worked together, and because we fought with courage. But remember, this is only the beginning. The aliens will not give up, and we must remain vigilant. Every lesson we learn today makes us stronger for tomorrow." The humans listened intently, their faces showing a mix of exhaustion and pride. They had witnessed the raw power of the Deathworlders, but they had also realized their own potential. Humanity was no longer a passive victim, they were active participants in their own survival that night. The city was quiet but alert. Soldiers patrolled the streets, and civilians worked to repair shelters and barricades. Fires still burned in some areas, casting long shadows across the rubble, but the people were no longer paralyzed by fear. They had learned that courage, strategy, teamwork could overcome even the greatest challenges. Lyra returned to her command post, reviewing maps and communication logs. She noted the patterns of the alien attacks. Planning future strategies in coordination with the lessons learned from the Deathworlders, every encounter, every skirmish, provided valuable knowledge that would help humanity survive the days ahead. From the ridge above the city, Lyra looked at the horizon where the Deathworlders now stood silently. Watching the outskirts of the battlefield, their presence was both reassuring and awe-inspiring. They had come not just to fight, but to teach. Every movement, every strike, was a lesson in power, strategy, and patience. Lyra understood now that humanity's survival depended on more than just weapons. It depended on intelligence, adaptability, and courage. The Deathworlders had shown them a path, but it was up to humans to walk it. As the twin suns set, casting a warm glow over the battered city, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight was far from over, but humanity had taken the first real steps toward reclaiming their world. Soldiers trained with new determination, civilians prepared defenses, and the city itself became a symbol of resilience far above the planet. In the silent expanse of space, the Deathworlders continued to observe. They moved with quiet vigilance, ensuring that humanity had the guidance needed to survive. Their presence was a reminder that power alone was not enough courage. Intelligence and unity were equally important. Lyra stood on the ridge one last time that night, staring at the stars. She thought about the future, the battles yet to come, and the lessons learned. Humanity had survived today, not because they were the strongest, but because they had adapted, learned, and fought together. And as long as they continued to do so, Lyra knew that Eridani Prime would endure. The Deathworlders had shown them a new way forward, and humanity was ready to follow it one courageous step at a time. The skies over Eridani Prime were clearer than they had been in weeks. The fires that once burned across the city had diminished, leaving behind charred ruins and broken streets. Smoke still rose from scattered buildings, but there was a sense of calm in the era, fragile peace that humanity had earned with courage, endurance, and the guidance of the Deathworlders. Commander Lyra stood on the ridge overlooking the city. The streets below were quiet now, filled with people emerging cautiously from shelters. Families hugged each other, children ran and laughed for the first time in days, and soldiers moved through the streets, helping clear debris and restore order. The alien horde was gone, retreating beyond the horizon, their numbers decimated by the combined efforts of humanity and the Deathworlders. Lyra's squad gathered near her, weary but proud. Lieutenant Orcs spoke first. "Commander, we did it. The aliens. They've retreated. The city survived." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Yes, they have retreated. But this is not the end. We must rebuild, learn from what happened, and prepare for anything that may come. Today we survived, but tomorrow may bring new challenges. We must be ready. The Deathworlders had already begun to leave, their massive forms moving toward the outskirts of the city. They had come, fought with unparalleled strength, and taught humanity important lessons about survival, strategy, and courage. Now, as suddenly as they had arrived, they prepared to depart. Lyra felt a mix of awe and gratitude. The humans had learned much in the past days. They had seen power beyond imagination, but more importantly, they had discovered their own resilience. The Deathworlders had shown them that strength alone did not guarantee victory intelligence. Teamwork and courage were equally vital. Civilians gathered in the city square, watching the giants in silence. Children stared with wide eyes, their imaginations filled with stories of heroes from beyond the stars. Families whispered words of thanks, and soldiers saluted. Acknowledging the warriors who had saved their world, Lyra descended from the ridge, moving toward her squad. "We have witnessed something extraordinary," she said. "But the lesson is clear. Humanity can endure, can adapt, and can fight. We are not helpless, and we are not alone. If we continue to act with courage and intelligence, we can face any threat." Auric glanced at the departing Deathworlders. "Do you think they will come back, Commander?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "I do not know. They act on their own terms. But they have given us something far more important than their presence. They have given us knowledge, strategy, and hope. We can survive without them, if we apply what we have learned." The survivors began organizing recovery efforts. Soldiers helped clear streets, rebuild damaged shelters, and protect civilians as they returned to their homes. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore communication networks, while scientists assessed the damage and repaired energy grids. Every action was a step toward rebuilding a stronger, safer city. Lyra visited several shelters, speaking with families and offering words of encouragement. She saw the resilience in their faces, the determination to survive, to rebuild, and to thrive. Children asked questions about the Deathworlders, their voices filled with curiosity and wonder. Lyra smiled, telling them that the giants were guardians' teachers, and reminders that courage and unity were humanity's greatest strengths. As night fell, the city lit up with fires of hope rather than destruction. Street lamps glowed, casting light over repaired streets, and the faint sounds of laughter and conversation returned. The people of Eridani Prime began to reclaim their world, not as victims, but as survivors who had proven their worth in the face of unimaginable danger. Lyra returned to her command center. Reviewing reports and planning the next steps, she knew the aliens might regroup, or new threats could appear, but humanity had changed. They had faced despair and emerged stronger. Every soldier, every civilian, and every leader now understood the importance of courage, adaptability, and teamwork. She looked out the window at the stars above. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Deathworlders moved silently through space, their mission complete. They had tested humanity, guided them, and ensured their survival. Lyra felt a deep sense of gratitude. These beings had come from beyond the stars to show that survival was not only possible, it was earned through courage, wisdom, and unity. The following days were spent rebuilding and training. Soldiers practiced new tactics inspired by the Deathworlders, incorporating strategies that emphasized observation, timing, and efficiency. Civilians assisted in fortifying the city, building shelters and defenses, and organizing community efforts to restore normal life. The lessons of the battle became part of the culture, a source of strength for everyone who had survived. Lyra often returned to the ridge, observing the city and reflecting on the events of the past weeks. She thought about the message humanity had sent into the stars, the plea for help that had gone unanswered for so long. And she thought about the arrival of the Deathworlders, a force beyond imagination that had answered the call in their own way. She realized something profound. Help sometimes comes from unexpected sources, and strength can be found in unity, courage, and determination. Humanity had faced a nearly impossible challenge and had survived. Not solely because of external power, but because of their willingness to fight, learn, and adapt. The city slowly regained life. Markets reopened, Children returned to play in the streets, and the sounds of music and laughter replaced the echoes of battle. Citizens shared stories of the Deathworlders, passing down accounts of the giants' incredible strength and the lessons learned from fighting alongside them. These stories became more than tales of survival. They became symbols of hope, courage, and human potential. Lyra gathered her squad one evening overlooking the city. "We have survived," she said, "but survival is not enough. We must continue to learn, to prepare, and to protect our world. The Deathworlders have shown us that we are capable of greatness, and we must rise to meet that potential." Her soldiers nodded, their eyes filled with determination. They had witnessed the impossible and had learned that humanity could endure. Together, they would ensure that Eridani Prime remained safe, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Weeks passed, and the city transformed. Structures were repaired, defenses improved, and the community strengthened. Every citizen carried the memory of the battle, the lessons learned, and the inspiration of the Deathworlders. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, united. And ready for the future, Lyra stood on the ridge one last time, gazing at the horizon where the Deathworlders had disappeared. The giants were gone, but their influence remained. They had taught humanity that courage, intelligence, and unity were the true measures of strength. And they had left behind a lesson that would endure for generations, no matter how dire the circumstances. Humans could survive, adapt, and thrive. The stars above Eridani Prime shone brightly, a reminder that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of possibilities. Humanity had faced an overwhelming threat and had survived. They had discovered their own power, and with courage, wisdom, and unity, they were ready to face whatever the future held. Commander Lyra returned to her home, tired but filled with hope. She thought about the people she had protected, the soldiers who had fought bravely, and the Deathworlders who had guided them. She knew that life would never be the same, but it was a life filled with potential. Humanity had survived the impossible, and in doing so, they had awakened to the true measure of their own strength. As night fell over the city, Lyra looked up at the stars once more. Somewhere out there, in the vastness of space, the Deathworlders continued their journey. They had answered a desperate call, fought alongside humanity, and left a lasting legacy. And on Eridani Prime, humans would remember. They would rebuild, grow stronger, ensure that no world would ever ignore their plea again. The battle was over, but humanity's journey had only just begun. They had survived the storm, faced the impossible, and learned that courage, intelligence, and unity were the keys to enduring any challenge. Eridani Prime had been saved, not just by powerful allies, but by the bravery and determination of its own people. Lyra smiled as she closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility lift slightly. They had survived. They had learned. They had awakened to the potential within themselves. And with that knowledge, the people of Eridani Prime would face the future with strength, hope, and unshakable courage.